So, I recently picked up the 25th anniversary re release of The Sims to finally be able to play the original on my modern computer. But when I saw this creepy message pop up, "You have been chosen, they will come soon," it seriously freaked me out and took me back to some terrifying memories I have with this game. Has anyone else ever been scared or creeped out by The Sims 1? Has anyone else ever been scared or creeped out by The Sims 1? I've I've got a weird story from back then that I still can't explain. This happened back in early 2000 when The Sims first came out. I was a broke college student, so I went looking for a used copy at this small shop near my apartment. Found this suspiciously cheap copy, and the seller seemed weirdly eager to get rid of it, practically shoving the dusty case in my face. I noticed these huge handprints all over the case and wiped them off with my sleeve before buying. It should have been my first red flag when the guy looked so relieved to get rid of it. I got home and installed it on my chunky desktop with one of those massive CRT monitors. Everything seemed normal at first. I was playing with the usual pre-made families like the Goths, and then I noticed this household called the Graves family. There's just one guy living there, Malcolm Graves. No job, but he had this weirdly detailed apartment. Back then, without much internet access or YouTube Let's Plays to check against, I just assumed it was some pre-made household that came with the game. Found out later from friends that there was never a pre-made Graves family. But at the time, I convinced myself it must have been some special version or whatever. That's when the strange things started happening. The large fingerprints I'd wiped off the game case, they reappeared. No matter how thoroughly I cleaned them, they'd show up again in the exact same spots a few days later. I thought it was just stubborn dust, or maybe the smudges were embedded so deep in the plastic that I couldn't completely get rid of them. The really unsettling part was Malcolm's behavior. Other Sims would act normal, yelling at the screen when they're hungry, throwing tantrums when they needed social interaction, that kind of thing. I'd been keeping all of Malcolm's needs almost green, but he'd just stand up from whatever he was doing, slowly turn to face the screen, and stare. Not at the camera like Sims sometimes do, at me. No expression, no movement, no reason. Just staring. His needs were all fine, so I figured it was just a glitch, but the weird thing was it only happened with the Grave household. You know, The Sims 1 had a sort of creepy vibe to it, right? There's prank calls, that high-pitched sound when a raccoon shows up. The game could be pretty unsettling when you're alone at night. Well, one night around 3 a.m., after playing for hours and completely losing track of time, I got one of those in-game phone calls. Usually just stuff like the psychic advisor giving random fortunes or whatever. But this time, the message box popped up saying, "You have been chosen. They will come soon." I remember getting goosebumps. And then I swear, not even 5 seconds later, my actual landline started ringing. I was alone in my apartment, everything dead silent except for that phone. I tried to calm myself, thinking maybe it was some kind of family emergency at 3 a.m. I hesitated, but picked it up anyway. The silence on the other end. I hesitated, but picked it up anyway. The silence on the other end. It felt like someone or something was just there listening. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. When I finally snapped out of it, I slammed that phone down fast. After that night, I started unplugging my phone whenever I played. I wasn't taking any chances. But things only got worse. I started finding these big, dusty handprints on my keyboard, mouse, even my CRT monitor. They definitely weren't mine. They're too big. At first, I tried to tell myself maybe they were my own prints, just smudged in a way that made them look bigger. Maybe I hadn't cleaned them as well as I thought, so I wiped them away. But a few days later, they came back. Same spots, same size, even though I hadn't touched those places since. That's when I started hearing it. Late at night, when everything else was quiet, I'd be laying in bed, half asleep, and then I'd hear it. Random taps on the mechanical keyboard. Not the usual creaks of an old apartment, but clear, deliberate key presses. The first time it happened, I'd lie there frozen in bed, not even breathing, just listening to those keys. You ever get that feeling where you want to check what's making a noise, but your body just won't move? That's exactly what it was like. After what felt like forever, my brain finally kicked in. What if it was a burglar? I shot up in bed so fast, my heart nearly jumped out of my chest. My computer was across the room, completely powered down, the monitor dark, but the sound was so distinct, like someone was sitting there, tapping away at random keys. I had to check. I forced myself up, switched on the desk lamp, and walked over. The keyboard was still. Nothing out of place. No programs open. No reason for any noise. I tried to convince myself I was just imagining it. It only happened a few times, and honestly, I didn't even connect it to the game. I brushed it off as my brain playing tricks. So, I kept playing because it was fun. But then, it wasn't just the typing. I was sitting there, late into the night as always, the familiar sounds of my Sims chattering away in their nonsense Simlish. But something was off. Every time Malcolm interacted with another Sim, I started hearing something strange. At first, I thought it was just the usual garbled gibberish, but then I swear I heard him say, behind, followed by something like, watching. My heart skipped, and I leaned in closer to the screen, trying to catch the sound through those dual old-school computer speakers. But as soon as I did, the words turned back into the usual Simlish nonsense. I tried to convince myself it was just a glitch or corrupted audio, but what really got to me was that the voice didn't seem to come from the speakers at all. It felt like it was coming from right behind me. I kept telling myself I was being stupid, but for days after that, I couldn't help checking over my shoulder every few minutes, even in broad daylight. That feeling of being watched just wouldn't go away. I'd been playing normally with other households too. Killing Sims in classic ways like removing pool ladders, building walls around them and deleting doors. Killed plenty of other Sims and nothing weird ever happened with them. Killed plenty of other Sims and nothing weird ever happened with them. But Malcolm... Something was different about this household. Being curious and maybe stupid, I decided to mess with him. Built a tiny room, added a cheap stove, deleted the door and fire alarm so no firefighters would show up to save him. Made him cook even though he had zero skill. When the fire finally started, things got seriously wrong. The exact moment Malcolm caught fire in-game, My apartment's fire alarm went off for no apparent reason. No smoke, no burning smell, nothing that should have triggered it. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I remember my palms were sweating like crazy on the mouse, but I couldn't look away from the screen. And then that same glitch happened again. He just stopped screaming, mid-animation, while still burning. And then he slowly turned to face the screen, just staring at me. I panicked and yanked the power cord. The second my computer went blank, the fire alarm stopped. But what happened next might be one of the most terrifying things in my life. I saw someone's reflection in the old CRT screens. This dark shape standing right behind me in the reflection. I swear it wasn't my reflection because it was moving. Not just my own movement, but actually shifting slightly around on its own. I probably should have just bolted out there, but you know how you just have to look even when you're scared out of your mind? My heart was hammering so loud as I started turning around the lake. So slowly. Each inch I turned felt like it took forever. And the whole time I'm thinking, please be nothing, please be nothing, please be nothing. And then nothing. Just my empty room. Same old posters on the wall, same mess of blankets on my unmade bed. When I looked back at the screen, it was just my own reflection staring back at me, looking absolutely terrified. After that night, I couldn't even look at my computer without my heart racing. Had to sleep with all the lights on for weeks, which meant I was basically running on energy drinks and coffee to stay awake during classes. My grades started slipping bad. I mean, how do you explain to your professor that you can't do your assignments because you're terrified of your computer? Every time I walked past that desk, I'd get this cold feeling in my stomach like someone was watching me. My friends kept asking me why I was camping out at the library instead of using my computer at my place. I had to make up all these dumb excuses about my internet being out or my computer having viruses or whatever. The next few months were rough. I did most of my homework at the library computers, but those restricted hours were killing me. But you know, when nothing scary happens for a while, you start feeling kind of stupid about the whole thing. Plus, I had this huge project coming up, and the library closing at 10 p.m. wasn't going to work with all these deadlines. So one afternoon, and I specifically picked the middle of the day, I finally forced myself to sit at my desk. My hands were so sweaty just moving the mouse. And when I saw that Sims icon, man, my throat got all tight. But I had to prove to myself I wasn't crazy. It took me like 20 minutes just to work up the courage to click on it to open the game again, and the whole time I kept looking over my shoulder, half suspecting to see something. The game loaded, and there it was. Malcolm's house. Saved. Even though I had forcefully shut down the computer before. I couldn't believe it. The message box popped up after Malcolm died, just like it always does when any Sim dies. But it was different this time. Rest in peace. Deepest sympathy. Malcolm has just died. Though the body is gone, the spirit will always remain. Watching. That was it. The second I saw that, I forced another hard shutdown on the computer, not even caring if my college files were corrupted. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. I ended up formatting my computer clean, And thank God my college project was saved on a dumb thumb drive and wasn't messed up by whatever was going on with that Sims game. After wiping the computer, all that weird stuff, the handprints, the typing sounds, it all just stopped. Everything went back to normal. Maybe it was just some virus, something a hacker injected into my copy of The Sims. But that still doesn't explain the weird things that happened outside the computer. I've been playing the digital re-release of The Sims 1 for a few days now. No weird glitches, no weird messages, beyond the usual creepy prank calls the game is known for. So far, anyway. Honestly, writing this out now is bringing back that same feeling of being watched. Never found out what happened to that copy of The Sims. I left it in that apartment when I moved out a few months later. Probably should have burned it or something. But I didn't want to touch it again.
Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. A quick shout out to my patrons, Melissa Perez, Lawrence Wallen, Eric Cifuentes, Jesse Hartley, Icy Narrates, Alonzo, Cupcake Hips, William Hartley, Rinku Star, Austin My Love, Mr. Sankofa, Seven Cities Journalist, and Ellie Hutmeyer. As usual, guys, I put a link to charity in the description. I'm going to keep it on the LA fires for a hot minute, but I will include other charities a little bit after. I understand that the fires are now no longer big news, but I would still like for the victims of the fires to receive help rebuilding their lives. And as I have been saying, even if that includes you unsubscribing from my Patreon for a while just so that you have something to donate to them, I highly encourage that and I will not be offended. And as usual, feel free to reach out to me on any social media. Let me know how I can be praying for you, and I am more than happy to do that for you. God bless you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.